The Israeli hostages released on Sunday have finally broken their silence, revealing the harrowing details of their time in Gaza. The tension is palpable as these accounts emerge, and even more so with the dramatic events unfolding in Israel and in the United States. Just yesterday, newly sworn-in President Donald Trump signed a series of groundbreaking executive orders that will, in major ways, define Israel's future. I'm Ben Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys. 3 young Israeli women, Doron, Rami, and Emily, were held captive for 471 agonizing days in Gaza after being torn from their families by Hamas. On Sunday, as part of a new ceasefire deal with Hamas, they were finally reunited with their loved ones. This is the footage of their emotional return, a long-awaited moment of relief after months of unimaginable fear. Now, overall, this is a bad deal for Israel, as Josiah broke down yesterday here on the channel. But the seriousness of the actual deal doesn't negate that it's absolutely thrilling to see these girls come home to their families. Thank God they're alive. Thank God they are now safely back home. Each and every human life is precious, and we've been praying night and day for the hostages to come home, and to see another life, another 3 lives come home out of the hellhole of Gaza is just unspeakable. Every story from released hostages so far has been different. Some have been horribly treated physically and emotionally. Other experiences have been comparatively not as bad. I'd say comparatively because even if the Israelis weren't physically abused, they were still ripped from their families for over a year and kept in a hellhole in constant fear of their lives without the medical attention that they needed. This alone is horrible enough without having to endure more torment, more torture, more sexual abuse on top of that. With each release, Israel holds its breath, waiting for the truth of what happened behind those concrete walls to come out. And now the Israeli military has cleared for publication the details of the captivity endured by these 3 women. Initially, they were all held together, but later separated. At times, they were confined in shelters built for displaced Gazans under heavy guard. Other times, they were kept underground with no daylight for long stretches of time. They were moved constantly to avoid Israeli rescue attempts. Emily, whose leg was injured and 2 fingers lost when she was shot by Hamas on October 7th, received no treatment from her captors. One of the other released hostages, Rami, was actually a paramedic and did everything she could to tend to Emily's wounds. At different times, they were able to get limited access to TV and radio, so they were able to learn the details of October 7th and see which of their friends were horribly killed by Hamas. When Hamas told them they were going to be released to Israel as part of this hostage deal, they didn't believe it. When the transfer actually happened, they were brought into the streets and put in Red Cross vehicles, and they were surrounded by a hostile Gazan crowd, and they were terrified. They thought they were going to be lynched by the mob. Thank God they weren't, and they were safely with their loved ones shortly afterwards. For now, 94 hostages remain in Gaza. How many of them are still alive, we don't know. 30 more hostages are expected to be released in the coming weeks as part of the first phase of this ceasefire deal. The remaining 64 could theoretically be freed in the second and third phases of the deal. But as we'll see in a moment, President Trump has already voiced his opinion on what we'll see happen in those following phases. He also just signed a whole string of executive orders that will massively impact Israel. We'll get into that in a second, but first, millions of Christians visit Israel every year. But do you know how many of them come to Judea and Samaria? Hardly any. Unfortunately, they're missing out on the place where a major part of the Bible was either written or occurred. Most tours, however, ignore this incredible region of Israel. Introducing the Heartland Experience, the only trip that focuses exclusively on Israel's biblical heartland. Our next trip is March 31st through April 9th, and the registration is already filling up. Even though this is a tour, we also incorporate several volunteer experiences so that you can get your hands dirty while serving the land and people of Israel. The Heartland Experience is not only the perfect way to experience Israel, it is the perfect way to experience the land and people that call Judea and Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland, home. Sign up today at serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link in the description. As I'm sure you are very aware already, Donald Trump was sworn in yesterday for a second term as President of the United States of America. The inauguration was held indoors due to the cold, but thousands gathered at the Capital One Stadium to watch the live broadcast. As a side note, Elon Musk did not do a Nazi salute after his speech at the stadium. The media is going crazy today comparing Musk to Hitler and the way he did his salute. But that's insane. Musk is really a big supporter of Israel. He even went to Israel after October 7th and toured the Gaza border. He went to Auschwitz last year with Ben Shapiro and did an event there. Musk came out and denied his hand gesture had anything to do with the Nazis because, of course, it doesn't. Anything you're seeing to this regard is really the media's desperate attempt to find gossip points that would drag the inauguration into the mud. After the ceremony, Trump and his team went over to the stadium, the Capital One Stadium, for a parade and for a more informal address to the gathered crowd. And in kind of an unusual move, Trump asked his new special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, to make a short speech. And as part of his speech, this happened.
We have some special people for me to introduce you to tonight. They are the families of hostages from Israel who have been in Gaza for the last year and a half. There are many of them here today. Several of the families have lost children and loved ones.
They invited formerly released Israeli hostages and families of current hostages to come up on stage to shake President Trump's hand and to stand behind him as he made his speech, which was a really touching move. After the festivities, Trump was really quick to jump into action, signing a whole string of executive orders on his first evening in office. While he was signing, he took questions from the gathered press, and he was asked about the ceasefire deal in Israel.
How confident are you, Mr. President, that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the 3 phases and ordeal?
I'm not confident. That's not our war, it's their war, but I'm not confident. But I think they're very weakened on the other side.
Do you support the 2 states?
Gaza, boy, I looked at a picture of Gaza. Gaza is like a massive demolition site. That place it's really got to be rebuilt in a different way.
Do you plan to help rebuilding Gaza?
I might.
It turns out not only was Trump signing a bunch of executive orders that will have a major impact on America, but he was also signing orders that will massively affect Israel. One of those orders was for the lifting of sanctions on Israeli settlers in Judea and Samaria, which is huge. In case you didn't know anything about it, the Biden administration randomly chose farmers and regular people living in completely legal and recognized locations in Judea and Samaria for sanctions. These guys were just going about their lives and woke up one morning to their savings accounts being completely frozen with no access to their funds. Some of these guys are friends of ours, amazing people who wouldn't hurt a fly. It's insane. They aren't American citizens, so there's no appeal process or trial or anything. The American government just put pressure on American banks to put pressure on Israeli banks to freeze their funds. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It seemed like the Biden administration was just kind of randomly choosing people to make an example out of them so they could say that we're sanctioning settlers in the West Bank. And it's crazy because it actually affects decent people living decent lives, and their lives are completely ruined due to this overarching policy of we're going to sanction settlers in the West Bank, not even American citizens. So thank God Trump put a stop to this madness yesterday. He then went on to instate sanctions on the International Criminal Court, the ICC, because of their madhouse arrest warrants for Bibi Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Also a fantastic move there. He also signed an order putting a 90-day halt to U.S. foreign aid programs. That includes the massively corrupt and in bed with Hamas UN refugee organization UNRWA, which is amazing. UNRWA is an absolutely corrupt organization, completely affiliated with Hamas. They're kind of one and the same now. They work together. UNRWA resources are funneled into Hamas and vice versa. UNRWA workers took part in atrocities on October 7th. Hostages were kept in an UNRWA teacher's house in Gaza, hidden from the IDF. Hamas regularly uses UNRWA facilities to hide weapons from the IDF. Absolutely needs to lose funding from the United States. I hope this continues indefinitely. Trump also signed an order that would authorize the deportation of extremism supporters, aka foreign students, attending pro-Hamas protests or riots or fundraising on campus for Hamas or Hezbollah or other extremist groups. He also lifted the restrictions on arms sales to Israel, reinstating Israel's ability to buy the weapons they need to continue their defense. This includes the 2,000-pound bombs that have been constantly denied Israel by the Biden administration. The times are changing, ladies and gentlemen. God willing, President Trump will have the courage and moral clarity to continue along the same track, to defend Israel, to support Israel, to enable Israel to defend herself from the enemies that surround her, the evil that surrounds Israel, to enable Israel to spread the light of God into the world to all of the nations. Guys, don't forget to check out our Heartland Experience. The link is in the description below. Subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Drop a like on this video, maybe a comment down below. As always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what is happening in Israel. We'll be back here soon here at the Israel Guys.